For most of human history, we weren't alone. We shared the planet with other kinds of humans, like the Neanderthals. But what if I told you there was another group, a ghost lineage so mysterious, their discovery completely tangled up the family tree we thought we understood? Well, today, we're diving into the incredible story of the Denisovans, and it all kicks off with something that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction. In a cave way out in Siberia, scientists found a tiny piece of a finger bone. I mean, it was so small you could hide it in the palm of your hand. They had absolutely no idea that this little fragment was about to completely rewrite the story of where we all come from. All right, so our journey starts right here in Denisova Cave, nestled in the Altai Mountains of Siberia. Now, archaeologists had been digging in this cave for years, but one tiny little piece of a pinky finger, that was about to turn everything upside down. And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, usually you're looking for skulls, big skeletons, something substantial. So how could one little bone fragment possibly change everything we thought we knew about the human family? Well, the answer wasn't in the shape of the bone, but in the secrets that were hidden deep inside of it. Okay, before we go any further, let's just quickly nail down a term we're going to be using a lot: hominin. All this means is the group that includes us, Homo sapiens, along with all of our extinct relatives and ancestors after we split off from the chimpanzees. So think Neanderthals, Homo erectus, and yeah, you guessed it, the Denisovans. The real magic here, the thing that cracked this whole case wide open, was a revolutionary technique: analyzing ancient DNA. Instead of just looking at the bone, scientists were now able to pull out the actual genetic code from the person who died in that cave tens of thousands of years ago. And the results were just staggering. The mitochondrial DNA, which, by the way, you only get from your mom, was unlike anything they had ever seen before. It wasn't modern human. It wasn't Neanderthal. It belonged to a completely separate, totally unknown group of hominins. They hadn't just found an old bone. They discovered a whole new branch on our family tree. And this is what's so wild. Think about it. We've known about Neanderthals since the 1800s because we found tons of their skeletons. But the Denisovans? We had their entire genetic blueprint before we had any real clue what they even looked like. It's the perfect example of how genetics just completely changed the game. So for a while, the Denisovans were this mystery group from a single cave. And the big question was, were they just a small, isolated population, or was there more to the story? Well, the hunt for more clues was on. And this just shows you how incredible this one cave is. It wasn't just a home. It was like a prehistoric crossroads. You had Denisovans living there, then Neanderthals, and eventually our own ancestors, modern humans. They even found the remains of a young girl, nicknamed Denny, whose DNA showed her mom was a Neanderthal and her dad was a Denisovan. That's a direct snapshot, proving our evolution wasn't a neat tree, but more like a messy, tangled river where different groups met and mixed. Then came the real game changer. Miles away from Siberia, a monk stumbled upon this jawbone in a cave on the Tibetan Plateau. Now, the bone was too old to get DNA from, but using a different, amazing technique, analyzing ancient proteins, they could still identify it. And unbelievably, it was Denisovan, and it was at least 160,000 years old. This was huge. I mean, this discovery proved Denisovans weren't just stuck in Siberia. They were a massive population spread all across Asia. And what's even crazier, it showed they had already adapted to the thin air of the Tibetan Plateau way before modern humans ever managed to get up there. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Because it turns out the Denisovans didn't just vanish into thin air. In a very real sense, they're still with us, hiding in plain sight, right inside our own DNA. Now, to understand how that's possible, we need to know this one word: introgression. It sounds complicated, but all it really means is that when two different groups interbreed, genes from one can get mixed into the gene pool of the other. Our ancestors didn't just live alongside Denisovans, they had children with them. And this chart right here shows you the results of all that ancient mingling. Just look at the pattern. You see practically no Denisovan DNA in people of European or African descent, but then you look at populations in Oceania, especially places like New Guinea, and boom, they carry the highest percentages of Denisovan DNA in the entire world. But it's not just in Oceania. As scientists developed better tools, they started finding this faint but consistent signal of Denisovan DNA all across East Asia and even into the Americas. This tells us the story of interaction between our ancestors and this ghost lineage is way more complex than we ever imagined. So, what's the big deal with all this ancient DNA? Well, it wasn't just junk that got passed down. In some cases, it gave our ancestors some pretty powerful genetic tools. Superpowers, really, that helped them survive in brand new environments. So you might be asking, why should we care about genes from a group that died out tens of thousands of years ago? Well, because these ancient genetic gifts are still active today, affecting the biology of living people in some really amazing ways. Let's look at two incredible examples. Remember that jawbone from the Tibetan Plateau? Well, it turns out that modern-day Tibetans carry a specific gene variant called EPAS1 that helps them thrive in low-oxygen environments. And where do they get it? Directly from the Denisovans. Or how about this? Another Denisovan gene, MUC19, which is found in some indigenous American populations, is linked to the immune system. It may have helped their ancestors fight off new diseases as they populated a new continent. This quote from Professor Huerta Sanchez really nails it. Instead of waiting around for thousands of years for the right mutation to pop up by chance, our ancestors got a kind of evolutionary shortcut. By interbreeding, they picked up genes that were already perfectly suited to local conditions. It was a massive survival advantage. Again, it's that braided stream, evolution happening through connection, not just separation. And all of this leaves us with one final amazing question. Just think about it. A little over a decade ago, the Denisovans were a complete mystery, a ghost lineage. Now, we know their legacy is literally written into the DNA of billions of people alive today. It proves our own story is far more complex and interconnected than we ever dreamed. And it really makes you wonder, what other secrets, what other ancient relatives are still waiting to be found hidden deep within our own genes?